Hello.
Hi, Lin-Manuel. My name's Arturo. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
Good, good. Thank you for taking time to speak about In the Heights.
It's my pleasure.
To start off, I wanted to know, um, basically, what was it like for you in this experience to bring a stage production onto film?
It was about 11 years. It was a long process. And um, again, it was a bit of a mumble, you know what I mean? Like it was sort of one step forward, two steps back. The miracle and the hard part was actually getting a Latino story on stage to Broadway with a Latino creative team and Latino, stars, and telling our stories. That was the hard part, and I remember thinking, like, can we actually get the movie of this done sort of in the same spirit? And we got sort of the Hollywood turnaround that is very cliche, and I'm sure you've heard versions of this story before, of you run into this wall, this self-perpetuating wall of, well, there aren't any Latino stars that test international. That was the line in 2009, 2010. And I remember thinking, well, if you don't make any movies with Latino stars, they will never have the opportunity to test international. It's a self-perpetuating cycle. But the short version is like that version of the movie never got made, and it took a lot of bouncing around and until well, one, Kiara wrote a brilliant screenplay that I think really reimagined the show in a smart way that captures the spirit of it, and really that sense of community. And then we found a director who had a big vision of the movie, and also like had, not for nothing, like had a track record of creating stars. Like he did sort of the thing you dream about with Crazy Rich Asians, is he created a lane where none existed. He made a big Hollywood movie starring Asians and Asian Americans, and some of them you'd heard of and some of them you'd never heard of. But now Henry Golding will go open a movie and Gemma Chan will go open a movie. And it was sort of like the thing we needed and were missing way back in the first go round of In the Heights. And so we sort of attacked In the Heights with a similar spirit. We said, one, we really want to shoot it on location, which is more expensive, but there's no other neighborhood that looks like our neighborhood. Like these are pre-war buildings built around a fucking mountain because we're the highest point in Manhattan. So they're all curved and weird, and the landscapes, you can't recreate that on a set. And John dreamed bigger for us than we're accustomed to dreaming. We had been pitching the indie version of In the Heights for so long, just the ay bendito, give us $3 million and we'll make it on the cheap. And John was like, no, these are everyday people, but their dreams are big. We have to make you wrote a big musical. And so I give him sort of credit for dreaming as big as he did, because that means our characters could too.
Thank you. Jumping off of that, can you tell me a little bit about how you work together with John? In he seems like a very kinetic director. So how did that work out with you guys collaborating?
Yeah. Well, listen, John's not Latino, but of the directors I'd met, I think he felt the most similar in spirit to both Kiara and I. He is first generation, like me and Q. He's one of many kids. His dad started a business. He grew up running around in that business. Again, this is all stuff that we relate to as Latinos, and just like Kiara and I related to very specifically. And he really, I think, understood the hyphenate nature of the story, right? Because this is a story written by two first-generation kids whose parents were born somewhere else, and every character is struggling with some version of home. What does home mean if your parents weren't born here? What does it mean? Your language? Does it mean your culture? Does it mean your Christmas traditions? What are the things we pass on, and what are the things we sacrifice so that the next generation can do better? I think he understood that on a molecular level, and so we knew he was the right person to tell that story. And then when it came to sort of the building blocks of the movie, that was, I can point to different things. Like he and Kiara were the ones who went on the location scout and saw Highbridge Park and were like, 96,000, maybe here in the pool. Maybe it's a pool number. Again, I would never in a million years have dreamed of that, but it's so much more dynamic and cinematic than setting it on the block, which is where it was kind of always set in all those script versions. But then we have this insane location on 175th Street, and he maximizes it. So he really kind of took every opportunity to cinematically dream bigger for these characters.
Thank you. Now, since the story focuses on the Washington Heights neighborhood, and now you have this like the tools of movie magic, how did you translate and keep that like the soul of that neighborhood and the original story while also adapting it to film and having these effects and these set pieces?
Yeah, I mean, again, it begins with the decision to film in the neighborhood. And then once you make that decision, you want this to be listen, the show's called In the Heights, the movie's called In the Heights. You want it to be a movie that the residents who live there can be proud of. So, we always kind of purchased locally and we cast our extras locally. And I remember going to the extras casting call being like, we're going to fuck up your parking for like a month. And I'm sorry, like I'm genuinely sorry, because I know what it's like to have a location. We've had, mostly just Law and Order comes this far uptown. But I know what it's like to have the trucks fuck up the parking. But if we do this right, we're going to honor your block and we're going to honor this neighborhood and it's going to live forever. So it began with one, like just the parts of the neighborhood that were important to me and Kiara. And, I think filming Abuela Claudia walking through that 191st Street tunnel, which is like a mile long, is so old it still says IRT on the outside of it. And is sort of, for any neighborhood residents, it's iconic because you have to walk through a mountain to get to the 1 train if you're coming from the west side. And for that to be this tunnel where she has this amazing, this is your life type reckoning, like beautiful. And then there were moments that really surprised us. And again, it's very hard to talk about this without crying, but like that John chose J. Hoodwright Park to stage When You're Home. That's a little park we have on 175th Street. My wife's grandmother lived in a building next to that park her whole life. My father-in-law grew up there. And I remember taking Vanessa to the rehearsals and her just looking over and going, is my grandmother's building going to be in the movie? And like bursting into tears. Then I burst into tears. Again, like that thing of honoring this place we grew up. We're both neighborhood kids. And so, again, like there's the big moments and then there's the everyday moments of like this park we love that we walked through on our way to our kids' pre-K every day, being in a big musical number.
Thank you. Do you have a favorite scene from the original play that you could talk about, and if that's changed now that there's like film versions of all of these musical numbers, or do you have one that's specifically you appreciated it more because of the way the movie one came out?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that jumps into my head is When the Sun Goes Down. I have this bad habit that like the last song I wrote was always my favorite. And When the Sun Goes Down was one of the last songs I wrote for the stage version of In the Heights. And what I love about it is it's this sort of song of these people who are totally in love with each other, but circumstances are sending them apart, and how wonderful that feels and how bittersweet that feels. And in a lot of ways, it's a very personal song. When I wrote the first draft of the show in college, I was still with my high school girlfriend and we couldn't figure out a way to be apart, and we needed to be apart, but we didn't know how to say it. And a lot of ways that song is the words I didn't have when I was 19, 20 years old. So again, like that song just makes me cry because it feels like, it's weirdly connected to the spirit of the very first version. And then John gets the idea to stage it on the side of a building, dancing up these fire escapes. And it's so cinematic and so beautiful. And I think unlocks the song even more. It's something we never could have done. It's literally something we could never have done on stage. But to me, feels like an ideal cinematic expression of that feeling. When you're in love, gravity doesn't exist. And it's so, again, that's an example of John just dreaming and completely reimagining something that I could never have imagined it. It's really kind of incredible.
Thank you. And now I wanted to ask, on the eve, the precipice of it coming out in theaters and HBO Max, how do you feel about the legacy of the thing you wrote years ago, and how far it's come, and how it's going to go not only to like a Broadway audience, theater production, but to like the whole world, anyone that could stream, as the internet connection?
Yeah, it's pretty overwhelming. I keep thinking about, I think it was either opening night on Broadway or near opening night on Broadway. We always did a prayer circle. The cast did a prayer circle in the basement. We'd hold hands, do a little prayer before we went on stage. And one night, one of our actors kind of said, I just want to say something. I'm here because Priscilla Lopez is here. And because Priscilla Lopez opened so many doors for us as a Latino performer and made a way where there sort of is no way. And everyone's crying, and Priscilla is actually not crying. She kind of just took it very graciously. And we say a little prayer, and she was standing next to me in the circle. She squeezed my hand and she looked at me and she said, when you throw a rock in the pond, you have no idea the ripples that are going to come back to you. And that I was 28 years old when she told me that. And the ripples that continue to come back to me, not only from this Latino community that gets to see themselves on screen in this big way, but so many actors and everyday people I talk to who say, Nina was the first time I felt seen in a musical. That I was first in my family to go to college, and that storyline spoke to me. To actors I meet who say, In the Heights was my first Broadway musical. So for them, a stage full of Latino characters is normal. That's just what a Broadway musical looks like to them. Whereas for me, it was very radical and something I hadn't seen, which is why Kiara and I said about making it. So the fact that is folks' entry point into what this art form can be, and the stories it will inspire are really what are exciting to me.
Thank you. And last question. Thanks again, Lin-Manuel. Why should people go check out In the Heights?
Oh, I don't know. I'm obviously biased because it's something I nurtured from just being young and Latino and wanting a life in this business and not knowing any other way than to make the thing I thought was missing, to it, becoming this really beautiful film that I think speaks to how we can be represented on screen when we represent ourselves with joy and with conviction and with purpose. I think when others write us, sometimes we get the 11 o'clock news version of us. It's us at our worst. It's crime and it's drugs. And when we write about ourselves with joy, there's just more stories. There's richer stories. And again, I think, again, like everyone in the movie is so good. There's so many movie stars in here that you just haven't heard of yet. Leslie Grace is a movie star. Melissa Barrera is a movie star. Anthony Ramos is a movie star. Corey Hawkins is a movie star. So I'm really excited for the world to see it, and I hope they see it.
Thank you so much, Lin-Manuel. Best of luck and appreciate the time.
Yeah, thank you, Arturo. Nice to meet you.
Take care, you too.